do. So our first speaker is vice person, political activist who worked in the United States diplomacy, Algis Avižienis, and his topic is empowering Atomized Individual. So please welcome him.
What I'm trying to do here, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. What I'm trying to do here is begin work on ideology of nationalism, modern ideology of nationalism. I always thought that, well, if the Marxists have their doctrine and the liberal Democrats have their doctrine, well, I think the nationalists should too as well. I started this about 10 years ago, and I wasn't very active yet in the opposition. So it was kind of a lonely undertaking. I was sitting at my kitchen table, writing, thinking. And then I asked my wife, well, what do you think? Would anybody care to listen to what I've produced here? Well, how about our neighbors? Maybe I could do their lawn, and then they have to sit there and listen at least 20 minutes. Well, this is going to be more than 20 minutes, maybe 40. I hope you bear with me. It's pretty long. But anyway, at least it's important to me. I hope it'll be interesting to you. The contemporary idea of individual liberty first began winning political battles in the American and French revolutions over 2 centuries ago. During the following decades, individual freedom steadily gained traction. In 1989, exactly 2 centuries after the French Revolution, we witnessed the dawn of the triumph of liberal democracy over communism in Eastern Europe. Some, like Francis Fukuyama, believe this event heralded the end of history and the enthronement of liberal democracy on a global scale. Who in our day would question the idea of freedom or democratic elections? Most of us worship, while others merely ritually genuflect at the altar of individual freedom. Yet, here we are in Vilnius, freedom-loving individuals from at least 5 different countries, fighting a rearguard action against the New World Order and its attack on nation-state democracy. But how is this possible? If liberal democracy has triumphed and the essence of modern democracy is diffusion of power, why are we fighting a desperate battle against global hegemony? Why has liberal democracy failed to protect us against the power of the billionaire oligarchs? Why has the ideal of individual liberty failed to stop the multinational corporations and financial institutions that control trillions of dollars and have appropriated our political process? Can elections still be democratic in the age of financial oligarchy and the commercialized gleichgeschaltete press? What is globalism? Essentially, this is concentrated financial power that has been accumulating for centuries. Overwhelming financial power has spilled over to appropriate the political, military, social, and cultural spheres of nations. Although global financial power is the predominant political force in our day, Marxist and Christian internationalists remain influential as well. That is why I want to examine more closely the principle of freedom. How effective has it been as the compass of political life and the life of Western democracies in general? Freedom is the absence of constraint, and for those individuals and peoples experiencing oppression, freedom is definitely worth pursuing. But if we desire freedom from oppression, we must have an oppressor. Once the oppressor stops restricting our freedom, we are immediately faced with the question of what we want. Free at last, but to what purpose? The Lithuanian people experienced 50 years of Soviet terror and control, and virtually the entire population of Lithuania joined the national liberation movement of Sąjūdis against oppression. But the end of Soviet domination also removed the main What has emerged in our country in the last 30 years is a noisy political marketplace in which politicians trade favors for their own benefit, their cronies, and financial backers. Crucial long-term goals like stopping depopulation are neglected in favor of such pressing issues as political party financing and coalition building after parliamentary elections. If this state of affairs continues for another 30 years, there will be no need to worry about the future of Lithuania, because most of the active population will have emigrated by then. We can understand why this is so. Soviet totalitarianism would not tolerate any free debates about alternative models of government or competing ideologies. Consequently, no alternative ideologies or government models could gain a foothold in Lithuania before 1990. Therefore, our country's ideological barriers against the onslaught of globalization proved to be ridiculously weak. Despite the near total acceptance of freedom as the guiding principle of political life, I would argue that the idea of freedom as such has failed us. Of course, we could attempt to rally our forces once again around the banner of liberty, this time in opposition to globalist hegemony, and suppose we succeed, just as the Lithuanian people won their battle against Soviet control. But the defense of freedom, this time against oligarchy, globalization, will get us right back to where we are now. The oligarchs will simply exploit the free market and find another avenue through which to purchase power. It is not enough to be against something, one must have an ideological basis on which to act. Where is the Occupy Wall Street movement right now? Where are the World Trade Organization protesters in 1999 who fought the Battle of Seattle? Yes, these forces have dissipated because they were composed of too many heterogeneous elements and too many disparate objectives. Our oligarch opponents are not fighting on a level playing field. They have clearly demonstrated on many occasions that they are not interested in defending the ideal of freedom. They have the power and they want even more of it. I would ask you as an intellectual exercise to examine freedom in a critical light. Some focused thought will reveal that the state of being free is in reality a form of passive disengagement. But passive disengagement is doable only in a relative sense. For example, outer space seems to be filled with free-floating matter, but external forces such as gravity nevertheless continually act on what we may perceive as detached debris. There is no such thing as absolute freedom in the vastness of our universe. Down here on Earth, we see that were it not for the presence of physically opposing forces, man could do very little. Even going for a walk would be impossible without the contrary force of gravity. Similarly, freedom from atmospheric pressure would mean that the body would run into problems breathing. Liberation from hard physical activity might easily transform the human body into a flabby mass of infirmities. The absence of obligations to other people could point to a life without meaningful human relations, loneliness, and ultimately helplessness. If we think about it, we see that what human beings really desire, and all living beings for that matter, is to be strong in opposition to the contrariness of life. We want the strength to overcome that which is external to our will. The German philosopher Nietzsche designated this inborn inclination to oppose or change external phenomena as the will to power, a very useful term. Power is a nearly irresistible state. All of us and all living beings pursue it. For power opens the door to everything we need. In contrast to the lofty principle of freedom, which another German philosopher named Hegel identified as the culmination of history, Nietzsche's will to power brings us down to earth. Nietzsche's assessment of human motivation reconnects man to the natural world. we can begin observing this fascinating subject as he really is, and not as someone says he ought to be. In my view, Nietzsche successfully distilled an enormous mass of observations of human behavior to obtain the most important, the most basic instinct that serves as the driving force of man, and not just man, but of all living things. This is not, as you might guess, the survival instinct. Rather, it is the will to power. In life, the status quo is not an option. There are too many and too powerful forces at play that will wear down the life form that is too fond of rest. Living organisms exist only because they are constantly pressing on the edges of their external worlds. Men in power are dynamic and despise the status quo. The attainment of positive ends ultimately is nothing but the appropriation of means towards the achievement of other goals. As soon as it attains one object, the will begins looking for a new one. The will cannot cease willing in the same way that a person cannot stop breathing. It is true that freedom is a desirable state, but only because it will open the way to exercising power. And even the achievement of freedom is impossible without considerable expenditure of energy. A person who desires to consciously shape his life or a community which seeks the common good should think primarily about how power might be obtained, consolidated, and directed against external opposition. This strategy is a far more promising avenue of personal advancement than dreaming these blissful dreams of detachment from the contrariness of life. We should welcome opposition because, as Nietzsche said, what does not kill us makes us stronger. Human beings whose innermost nature compels them to seek power must overcome external restrictions, limitations, and opposition for their entire lives. Therefore, unbounded freedom, perpetual universal peace, or the brotherhood of man are goals that will forever be beyond our reach. What principles govern the acquisition of power in a person's life? I will list three. An individual engaged in building up his power and influence should ensure that his efforts are focused, that they are continuous, and that they aim at objects which can reciprocate. Regarding the principles of focus and continuity, it is self-evident that any notable achievement requires carefully aimed and sustained efforts. One resigns oneself to years of professional training or extended education in pursuit of only one or a few goals. Please note that we are talking about discrimination against a mass of frivolous ambitions, yearnings, and passions. The basic problem is our limited energy, perhaps our most important possession. Concerning the principle of reciprocity, nature will simply not allow selfless expenditure of energy on objects that cannot or will not provide compensation for the benefits they receive. This path will sooner or later end in exhaustion or extinction. Unfortunately, far too many educated Europeans lavish their efforts on objects that cannot requite their love. For example, all European nations are experiencing a slowly unfolding demographic catastrophe in which young people are increasingly reluctant to bring children into the world. Instead of raising children, many young European professionals lovingly care for their dogs, their cats, home interiors, or automobiles. More recently, Europeans have begun worrying about climate change or the state of the world's atmosphere. Some idealists have even expressed their determination not to have children because newly conceived people represent yet additional sources of atmospheric pollution. Obviously, the rejoinder to this argument is that we should all exit life, and the sooner the better. That would surely improve the health of Mother Earth. There is nothing wrong with having pets, but the problem is that the lifespan of domestic animals generally is 1/5 of human life expectancy. In a relatively short time, our cats and dogs will leave us. It is much the same with a person's dedication to protect the Earth's climate. The planet is an inanimate object that is unable to appreciate our health. Our children, however, are another matter. Unlike pets, they most likely will outlive us. Our progeny are an excellent, though not guaranteed, insurance policy against loneliness and age. On a social level, our offspring will grow up, learn a profession, and join the workforce, which is very good for those of us who retire from work. Consider the idea that our personal power depends most of all on our close interactions with or investments in our children, our neighbors, colleagues, or fellow citizens. For man is a social being that is utterly helpless if cut off from family interactions and innumerable human associations. The individual cannot even acquire an identity without profound and long-lasting bonds with his most intimate human environment. As I noted previously, however, this investment must be focused and of long duration. First, let us deal with the social aspects. The great paradox of human existence is that significant individual power can be achieved only by surrendering much of man's conscious individuality to his associations. Without close ties to other individuals, man remains a weakling, unable to fend for himself against the harsh forces of his natural environment. What is even more dangerous to an isolated individual are the threats posed to him by other individuals or groups of people. Think about it. Our biggest opportunities and simultaneously our biggest headaches come not from the natural world, the earthquakes, the storms, the heat, or the cold, or wild animals, but people and groups of people. What does President Trump worry about the most when he is sitting in the White House? Is it the cold winters in Minnesota or the hot summers in Washington, D.C.? Of course not. He must deal primarily with his campaign funders, his blue-collar supporters, the Democrats, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians. Man creates and maintains associations by alienating some of his essence, i.e., by sharing his time, energy, creativity, knowledge, and intellect with others. We as nationalists must therefore engage thinking individuals to help them perceive on a deeper level the derivative nature of their personal power. The will to power instinctively prods the individual to join and form groups because it senses where the sources of the greatest potential power are located, the intellectual and moral resources of other human beings. The pooling of resources and potential greatly augments the strength of pursuing common aims that in turn benefit the individual. Cohesive, intimate, and long-term human associations contain tremendous potential for mutual benefits. The reciprocal surrender of will gradually creates a new phenomenon of mental construction, in short, association, which grows stronger as its members continually add new contributions on its behalf. The same principle of accumulation of power, which underpins the life instinct of individual beings, also governs the corporate life of associations. The latter also need to grow stronger, and they will inevitably compete for limited resources with other associations. I might add that competition generally has been the chief characteristic of all recorded history. It is the chronicle of powerful individuals and their human associations incessantly jostling for power. Whether the individual will be successful in human affairs will depend to a considerable extent on the strength of his attachments to the institutions which shape him. Even a revolutionary anarchist will rely on the discipline, application, and knowledge instilled in him by family life and formal education, if he wishes to be an effective agent of change. The cohesion and strength of associations exercise an enormous influence on the individual's fate. Compare the chances to advance in life that children have who are born into a European middle-class existence, or someone else growing up in the dirt-poor conditions of African village life. The well-being of our closest associations should therefore be of vital importance to all of us. Our investments in our families, local communities, political parties, or the nation are in a real sense the most important investments we could make in our own well-being. Significant groups such as families, religious communities, classes, and nations are characterized by years of intense interaction. At some point, the accumulating mass of interactions produces familiarity that flows into intimacy, which at length can be transformed into sentimental attachments, patriotism, or love. This is the true source of the strength of national communities. Their members can fall back on centuries or even millennia of close association. Our globalist enemies, however, condemn what they call national egoism, while at the same time declaring their fervent love of all mankind. Already we see a contradiction in this internationalist position. Clearly, one cannot love all of mankind and yet hate those who love only their connationals. We know from experience that the globalists see only one way to achieve universal harmony, and that is by waging political war. This is nothing new. Imperialist powers have for centuries waged endless wars for eternal peace. The building of bonds of love between people requires a great deal of time and effort, i.e. personal interaction that is focused and of long duration. Since time and energy are in a limited supply, there will only be enough time and energy to forge selected bonds. Again, discrimination is inevitable. Thus, declarations of universal brotherhood will remain unfulfilled. Yet the modern European individual has been educated to embrace universal freedom and equality. I realize that we are focusing on the idea of freedom, so it is incumbent on me to touch on the interrelations between freedom, equality, and universality. I believe all three of these concepts spring from Christianity, which is the universal doctrine. They derive from the Christian deity's declared love of all souls. If the Almighty commands that all people should be treated with dignity because he considers all his souls equal, then who are we to think differently? Here we see that the imperative of equal treatment of all people blends into the imperative of universal freedom. For if all men are to be equal, it is unacceptable that some should suffer deprivation of freedom or oppression. Why is the Christian God concerned with the fate of all people and not just those committed to the Christian faith? Why does God insist that Christians come to the aid of all humanity? And indeed, we observe Christian missionaries working altruistically to save souls in the furthest corners of the world. The answer to this question is simple. God intends that his spiritual reign should encompass the entire planet. Hence, the Christian God may very well be the prototype globalist. And as we know, the Catholic Church for centuries taught Europeans that their salvation depended on their adherence to the Word of God. If we consider that the Roman Catholic Church had a near monopoly on education and culture in Europe for at least a millennium, then we can appreciate how Europeans came to be so expansive-minded and fond of universal values. The universality we are discussing here is the idea that human beings should be united politically in a global family. Two other major intellectual forces, aside from Christianity, have labored for centuries to achieve the primacy of equality, freedom, and universality, namely Marxism and neoliberal globalism. Sensing the profound community of values between Christianity and Marxism, Oswald Spengler quipped that Christianity is the grandmother of Bolshevism. All three schools of thought seek in vain to reform the essentially restless and assertive nature of man. Christianity aims at a worldwide community of peace and harmony as a prelude to the paradise of the afterlife. Marxism seeks to abolish class exploitation in a one-world framework of brotherhood, another version of paradise. Neoliberal globalism intends to achieve a universal reign of peace and prosperity through the abolition of sovereign nation states and distinct national identities. We see how all three of these universal ideologies stand in contrast to our ideals of national sovereignty and the continuity of our languages and cultures. We see a Catholic Pope blessing third world mass immigration, a process that global financial interests and the cultural Marxists also favor. German Chancellor Merkel perhaps best exemplifies this internationalist common front against the national idea. She was brought up to be a Christian by her devout parents, and simultaneously a good Marxist by her East German communist educators. Now she serves global oligarchic interest. Is there a contradiction here? Not really, if you consider that all three doctrines aim at one fundamental goal, the unification and control of all mankind. I might point out that the Jewish faith provides its followers with better tools for advancement than Christianity. Although the ancient religion of the Hebrews created many of the elements of the newer Christian faith, it nevertheless differed from church doctrines in a radical way. One of the most successful nations on earth, the Jewish nation, is characterized by exclusivity of affiliation and an extraordinarily long and uninterrupted history. The Jewish faith and people have endured 4,000 years, which is twice as long as the Christian faith. Throughout its long history, the Jewish nation has been guided by the Judaic faith, which has provided it with a sense of unity, common purpose, and momentum to overcome a long line of adversaries. Unlike the universal Christian faith, which teaches its adherents to serve God, community, and all mankind, Judaism regards God and the Jewish nation as a unity vis-a-vis the rest of humanity and the world at large. God is the object of supreme loyalty to the Jewish nation, just as the chosen people are the main concern of God on earth. The deity and the Jewish people are thus merged into a single enterprise, which admits of no major digressions or dispersal of energies. As in Christianity, the essential relationship is a triangle consisting of the individual, God, and a third element, which, however, is the Jewish people and not all mankind. It is notable that Israel, alone among the OECD states, is not experiencing a birth deficit or demographic catastrophe. The Jewish population of Israel has increased 800% since the establishment of Israel in 1948. This population increase logically would require additional land, which Israel is in the process of acquiring on the West Bank, despite massive opposition by Arab populations. Interestingly, the European Union strongly supports Israel on ideological grounds, while within the EU itself, the predominantly Christian European states acquiesce in assimilationist policies that are undermining European national communities. All three universal worldviews aim at freedom, equality, peace, and harmony, but have resorted every now and then to concentrated power to achieve their ends. These universal faiths have at some point in history unleashed ruthless violence and oppression against those who stood in their way, although, of course, the Catholic Church long ago distanced itself from hopes of achieving direct political power. Marxism and contemporary globalism have learned the subtle art of disguising their real aim, the pursuit of secular power. The three universal doctrines have taught Europeans to love freedom, and especially freedom from the alleged limitations of national boundaries. The non-Christian internationalists propagate freedom from the burdens of family life, the restrictions of distinct sexual identities. The typical European is used to a relatively high level of education, social security, personal freedom, and comfort, all of which incidentally are being eroded by the leveling process of globalization. We nationalists should stress that it was the 19th century nation states that gave Europeans their social security, universal literacy, access to affordable higher education, and their dignity as educated and free individuals, not the European Union. Germany, under Chancellor Bismarck, was the first country in the world to introduce a broad package of social welfare measures, including old age pensions and disability payments. Why? Bismarck needed the support of the working masses in his struggle for German unity. Universal literacy, democratic rights, economic welfare all impact on the loyalty people will feel towards their state and the relative power of each nation. In the period of nation-state competition of the 19th century, each state sought to surpass their competitors in these fields. Competition forces one to perform better. Monopolization breeds stagnation. Nation-states do not have a monopoly on waging war. There were devastating wars before nation-states appeared. The 30 Years' War, fought on religious and dynastic grounds, wiped out about a third of 17th century European populations. And multinational empires throughout history have been keen on military conquest. Competition between nations can have a peaceful and constructive character, which was evident to a large extent in the century that followed the end of Napoleon's imperialistic dreams in 1815 and ended with the outbreak of World War I. The 19th century's rapid advances in mass education and the growth of the news media, transportation, and information technologies opened the way to integrating the masses into the life of the growing national states. This was the social, political, and cultural upheaval that the Spanish philosopher Ortega y Gasset deplored in his Revolt of the Masses. This Spanish thinker regretted that the standards of European high culture were being debased by mass culture in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. But his was a reactionary view that, taken to its logical outcome, would have returned the European masses to the helplessness of illiteracy and feudal exploitation. The newly created national educational systems of 19th century Europe instilled pride in national achievements and the desire to obtain new triumphs for coming generations. State support for national culture, generous financing of public buildings, monuments, parks, and urban renewal in general raised the stature of the nation-states in the eyes of their citizens. During the second half of the 19th century, the European capitals and major cities became visibly more attractive. Think of the boulevards of Paris or the altar of the nation in Rome. For many Europeans, the ideas of national pride and solidarity brought meaning and stability into their lives, which had been disrupted in the beginning phases of the Industrial Revolution. As the century advanced, it was becoming evident that nationalism and the strong national states, which were founded on this ideology, were breaking the isolation of the individual in the newly built industrial centers. Of all political formations recorded since the fall of the Roman Empire, it would be difficult to find political entities whose achievements exceeded those of the 19th and early 20th century European nation-states. The latter clearly outperformed the archaic political units which were founded on the principles of feudalism or monarchism. Within their defined borders, national states accumulated and organized an optimal level of resources and power. The elites of these states realized that the greatest possible sources of power available to them were their people, and especially the broad masses, which were motivated to actively participate in national life. By contrast, only a small part of the inhabitants of feudal or monarchical political units was politically conscious and active. The word of the king or the duke often was interpreted as the law. The written word and education were relegated to the sphere of influence of the clergy. The majority of the illiterate subjects of these traditional states remained passive objects of exploitation, bound to the land, and poorly informed about the political and economic issues of their polities. The nation-states regarded each of their citizens as a valuable element of power. The European states, organized on the principle of nationalism, surpass all other political associations that appeared after the Roman Empire in their solidarity, vitality, productiveness, and creativity. Although many contemporary historians condemn the great power rivalry of the 19th century, one must nevertheless admit that it was this very competitive environment which stimulated European economic development, investment in infrastructure, technological advances, social welfare, popular education, and national culture. The 19th century was the century which saw Europe at the pinnacle of its power in the world. If an individual's intellectual contribution to the community is to endure, then the community must maintain a relatively unchanging composition. Only an association stable in its constitution will ensure discrimination and continuity in the pursuit of its goals, which is essential for sustained accumulation of strength. By contrast, a society comprised of heterogeneous elements will find long-term planning and joint action more challenging. This kind of community will prefer individual freedom over national consolidation. The ambitious individual may reason that if the mind can conjure up infinite possibilities, then they must be attainable. This imagined infinite creative power may explain why many people are so attracted to abstract freedom. For freedom seemingly offers infinite creative possibilities. But assembling a mass of information or dabbling in many fields will only dissipate force. A person cannot simultaneously become a nuclear physicist, a psychologist, and a concert pianist. A vital factor, the will, is needed to compress the massive impressions crowding into the mind into a defined pathway that leads to strength. The active individual is obliged to channel available time and energy into building up only selected unions and avoiding the dispersal of force. Indiscriminate aims, unbounded ambition, and a misplaced affection dissipate force. These are among the worst errors, the worst sins that human beings can commit. German Chancellor Merkel is certainly guilty of having made these grave mistakes by inviting masses of impoverished third world inhabitants to come and enjoy her country's social security largesse. One of the worst consequences of this open door approach is that it undermines the principle of reciprocity found in the nation state. The newly contrived universal right to immigrate means that European citizens who regularly paid into their national welfare systems for decades will not receive their fair share of pension payments. Even now, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, of state aid are being appropriated to new arrivals who have contributed nothing to the functioning of social welfare systems in European countries. By contrast, exclusivity of membership and stability of interaction in human associations, including nation-states, ensure that reciprocity will remain in effect. Homogeneity of composition determines a steady advance. Shifts in direction require stopping and beginning to build up the momentum anew. Too many job transfers, too many divorces, and too many broken resolutions will discourage the individual from committing to positive long-term goals. In conclusion, I would like to address the issue of the fragility of European nation-states. It is possible you may still be left wondering about the viability of small and medium-sized European states in a world populated by giants like the US, China, Russia, and India. Of course, there are no guarantees as to the survival of European nations, just as the ancient Greek city-states could not be sure of their long-range future. The Greek city-states were tiny, but they managed to form a common front against Persia, the Asian giant of the time, and emerged victorious, at least for a considerable period. Certainly the prospects for Europe have not improved since Oswald Spengler published his Decline of the West in the early 20th century. Spengler warned European imperialists that sharing their advanced technology with the populous Asian peoples would be disastrous in the long run. for he felt that the latter could become dangerous competitors once they freed themselves from colonial rule. It took about 1 century for Spengler's admonitions to become concrete reality. Yet the reader should not feel intimidated by the growth, the listener should not feel intimidated by the growth of China's power. On the contrary, China's growing power might provide the external tension that the European nations would need to push them towards a responsible, cooperative stance in security affairs and avoid rekindling old territorial rivalries. Clearly, the renewal of territorial claims would harm the interests of a Europe of national states situated in a world of giant states. Continental-sized countries outside of Europe would surely exploit such acute tensions to block effective collective security arrangements. Any political force advocating territorial division in Europe would be pursuing short-term advantages that would be disastrous for all Europeans in the long term. The Gdansk-Danzig issue ought to serve as a clear warning about the potential of even small territorial disputes to draw into European affairs much larger powers, which are not necessarily interested in perpetuating European nation states. In the 21st century, Europe is not strong enough to ignore this danger. European nation states were already standing on the abyss in 1939, and the danger signals were apparent to Oswald Spengler in 1918. Sooner or later, the crisis of globalization should reduce the pressure on European nations to follow an assimilationist course and heighten the rewards for local initiative and self-reliance. If this process is not delayed too much, then Europeans will get another chance to rebuild their national lines, compete among themselves on the margins and in non-military ways, and deal collectively with external powers in the coming decades. Depending on which countries are counted as European, Europe is a continent of over 500 million talented and industrious people. But this will probably be its last opportunity. Thank you.